a bright, promising high school girl, stabbed 29 times inside her own car, in a public mall parking lot just days before Christmas. No witnesses, no suspects, no justice for nearly 4 decades, until one quiet breakthrough, a discarded soda straw, cracked the case wide open. What really happened that night? Why did it take 39 years to uncover the truth? And how did the killer manage to live a normal life all that time? This is more than a murder, and this is the story no one else is telling like we are. Welcome to Dark Chronicles, where shadows hide the truth. December 19th, 1979. Cedar Rapids, Iowa. It should have been just another cold winter night in a small Midwestern town. But that night, everything changed. Michelle Martinko was 18 years old, a senior in high school. Beautiful, bright, and by all accounts, full of life. She had just attended her school's choir banquet and made a stop at the Westdale Mall, a brand new shopping center that had quickly become the social hub of the city. But Michelle never came home. By 2 a.m., her family reported her missing. By morning, police had found her body in the parking lot, slumped over in the front seat of her Buick, stabbed 29 times. The scene was shocking, brutal, overkill, the kind of violence that screamed of rage. But why? Who could do this? And how could it happen in a public space with no one seeing a thing? This is the story of a case that went cold for nearly 40 years. A murder that haunted an entire city, a mystery that refused to die, and a killer who almost got away until science, persistence, and a touch of luck brought the truth to light. I'm not here to tell you what to believe. I'm just here to walk you through what happened. Because the murder of Michelle Martinko isn't just a case. It's a warning, a window into the darkest parts of human behavior, and a testament to what it takes to find justice when time, memory, and evidence all seem to vanish into thin air. Let's go back. Michelle Martinko was, by every account, someone who stood out. She had a bright personality. She had big blonde hair, a Farrah Fawcett kind of confidence, and a quiet strength that drew people in. She sang in the school choir, excelled academically, and was loved by friends and family alike. That night, after the choir banquet, Michelle told her parents she was going to the mall to look at a coat her mother had put on layaway for Christmas. She never made it home. Surveillance cameras were non-existent in 1979. The mall had no security footage. No witnesses saw what happened in the parking lot. But what the police found told a horrifying story. Michelle had been ambushed in her own car. She fought back. She was covered in defensive wounds. But the killer didn't stop. 29 stab wounds. No items stolen. No sign of sexual assault. Just rage. Police began the investigation by looking at the people closest to her. And like in most cases, they started with the boyfriend. The name Andy Seidel came up almost immediately. He wasn't just Michelle's ex-boyfriend, he was her possessive ex-boyfriend. Friends said he didn't take the breakup well, that he kept tabs on her, that he asked her friends where she was, who she was seeing, and why. He was the first real suspect. Police brought Andy in. He claimed he was home that night, shortly after the mall closed. His alibi? His mother. She said he was there. But how reliable is a mother's word when her child's freedom is on the line? There were no witnesses, no camera footage, and no hard evidence. Still, Andy's behavior only made suspicions worse. At Michelle's funeral, he was inconsolable, crying uncontrollably, even throwing his arms around her lifeless body in the casket. Witnesses say he asked a chilling question. Did she love me when she died? Or did she love Mike? Mike Wyrick, Michelle's ex before Andy. He was also questioned, even though he was over 100 miles away at college when the murder happened. The police were thorough, and Mike had to relive everything, including being shown graphic crime scene photos during interrogation. But nothing pointed directly to Mike. And Andy? He was suspicious, but not provably guilty. So investigators expanded their focus. They explored other possibilities. Was it a random act? A robbery gone wrong? Michelle had been carrying cash that night, money intended to pay off the coat, but it hadn't been taken. Her purse and shopping bags were untouched. So was it something else? A failed assault? A stalker? Then came a chilling revelation. Michelle had told someone earlier that she felt like she was being followed, that she was uneasy about going to the mall alone. She even received a warning from a friend to hide the cash she was holding. And yet, no one saw the attack. Her body showed signs of resistance, cuts along her hands, arms, and clothing. She had fought hard, but whoever attacked her came prepared. No fingerprints, no DNA they could use. The murder weapon? Never found. As days turned to weeks and months, the case stalled. And then it went cold. By the mid-1980s, the Martinko case was frozen in time. The evidence collected was bagged, tagged, and shelved. Officers came and went. Leads were followed, then abandoned. Families grieved. Suspicions lingered. And every December 19th, the local news brought Michelle's face back into homes across Iowa. Her picture, her name, her story. A bright young woman, a nightmare that never ended. But in 2005, nearly 3 decades later, someone took another look. A new detective opened the old evidence file. And there, sitting quietly for over 25 years, was something they had missed. A small red flag, a piece of the killer left behind. It was a lab report, tucked deep inside thousands of documents, and it changed everything. The report showed something unexpected. On the gearshift of Michelle's car, there was blood. Not just hers, a second sample. Male. Mixed in. A likely cut on the killer's hand during the stabbing. Careless, fast, chaotic. At the time in 1979, DNA profiling didn't exist. But now, in 2005, it did. Detective Doug Larison, who had gone to high school with Michelle, saw an opportunity. He sent the samples for analysis and waited. The results came back with a viable DNA profile, a full genetic fingerprint. But when they ran it through CODIS, the nationwide database of convicted criminals, there was no match, no hit. Another dead end, but not quite. The DNA wasn't useless. It was just waiting for the world to catch up. Fast forward to 2015. Technology had evolved again. A new method was emerging, genetic genealogy. Instead of searching criminal databases, investigators could now use public ones. The kind people submitted their DNA to for fun, to learn about ancestry, ethnicity, or long-lost cousins. And that's where the case broke open. In 2018, the team sent Michelle's mystery DNA to a service called GEMatch. Weeks later, they got an alert, a partial match. Not the killer, but a second cousin. From there, genealogists mapped out family trees, decades of records, obituaries, birth certificates. They narrowed it down to 3 brothers living in Iowa. 3 brothers, all genetically close enough to be suspects. It was time for real-world investigation. The team tailed the first brother to a restaurant and collected his straw. Not a match. The second brother's toothbrush was found in his trash. Still not a match. Then came the third, Jerry Burns, a businessman, married, father of 3, no criminal record, no known connection to Michelle Martinko. On paper, he was invisible. Police watched him at a pizza place in Manchester, Iowa. He drank soda from a glass, left it on the table. That glass would become the smoking gun. The DNA from the soda glass was a perfect match to the sample left in Michelle's car 39 years earlier. It was enough. On December 19th, 2018, exactly 39 years to the day of Michelle's murder, detectives walked into Jerry Burns' business and sat across from him. They asked what he remembered about that night. He said, nothing. When confronted with the DNA, Jerry denied everything. He didn't know Michelle, had never met her, had no idea how his blood ended up inside her vehicle, but the evidence said otherwise, and this time the clock wasn't on his side. February 2020, 40 years after Michelle Martinko's murder, Jerry Burns sat in a courtroom, charged, silent, staring ahead. The prosecution laid out the facts. Simple, relentless, unavoidable. There were no witnesses, no weapon, no motive anyone could pin down. But they had one thing that trumped everything else: his DNA. Left behind in a pool of blood on the gearshift of a murdered 18-year-old girl, mixed with hers. Undeniable, inexplicable. Jerry's defense? It was thin. His lawyer suggested the DNA might have gotten there through secondary transfer. Maybe Jerry had touched the car at a dealership. Maybe he brushed up against something that touched her. Maybe the Buick had been at a lot he once visited. But the dress, Michelle's blood-soaked dress, had his blood on it too. And last time anyone checked, car dealerships don't sell blood-stained prom dresses. Detective Matt Denlinger, son of one of the original officers on the case, took the stand. Calm, measured. He told the jury how they had tracked Jerry for months, how the straw at the pizza shop had changed everything, and how, during his interview, Jerry had offered something unsettling. Vague comments about blocking things out, traumatic events, and not remembering everything. The courtroom listened in silence. Then came the witnesses. Friends from high school. People who had lived with the pain of Michelle's death for decades. People who had spent years believing Andy Seidel, the ex-boyfriend, was guilty. Even Andy testified, decades after being cleared by DNA. He stood in the courtroom, not as a suspect, but as a man trying to breathe again. Michelle's sister Janelle spoke of the loss, her voice cracking, her eyes holding back years of grief. She told the jury about Michelle's scoliosis, her strength, her dreams, her innocence, and how it all ended in a mall parking lot under cold Iowa skies right before Christmas. Then, in one of the trial's strangest moments, a co-worker of Jerry's came forward. He testified that Jerry had once made a disturbing joke. He said, "If I beat you in Pinnacle again, I'm going to have to take you to the mall." Nobody laughed. The prosecution's closing statement was sharp. "There are 8 billion people in the world," the attorney said, "and only one person's DNA matches what was left in that car. 1 in 100 billion odds. That's not coincidence. That's guilt." The jury deliberated for just a few hours. On February 24th, 2020, Jerry Burns was found guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. But even as the gavel fell, questions lingered. Why did he do it? How did he know Michelle, if he ever did? Was it random? Was it personal? Or was Michelle simply a target of opportunity at the wrong place at the worst possible time? The conviction of Jerry Burns brought closure. At least, that's what the headlines said. But ask anyone who lived through the fear, the doubt, the grief, and they'll tell you, closure is complicated. For years, Jerry had lived a quiet life. A businessman, a father, a husband, no criminal record, no hint of violence. His arrest didn't just shake a town, it shattered the illusion that evil always looks like a monster. Because sometimes, it looks like your neighbor. Even today, Jerry has never confessed. He has offered no explanation, no apology, no reason, just silence. His daughter Jennifer and other family members stood by him in disbelief. They described a man who was always there, supportive, caring, ordinary. How could that man be the one who ended Michelle Martinko's life in such a brutal way? The answer remains buried somewhere between science and psychology, between guilt and denial, between what people do and what they let themselves forget. The trial sparked conversations across Iowa, on forums, social media, even among true crime circles. Speculation bloomed. Was Michelle the only victim? Had Jerry done this before, or would he have done it again? To date, no other crimes have been connected to Jerry's DNA. But the Mason City Police, investigating the infamous disappearance of news anchor Jody Huisentrude, haven't ruled out any possibilities. Jerry's name has floated in online theories, but so far, nothing concrete, nothing provable. Still, the questions won't go away. What makes a man live for 39 years with that kind of secret? How do you eat dinner with your children, knowing what you've done? How do you go to work, make small talk, smile at strangers, while carrying a truth soaked in blood? These aren't just questions for Jerry Burns. They're questions for all of us. Michelle Martinko was a young woman on the edge of her adult life. She never made it to her next Christmas, never wore that coat, never sang again in the school choir. She became a memory, a ghost, a headline. But she also became something more. She became the reason generations of investigators refused to give up, the reason genetic genealogy found its footing in modern justice. The reason a father and son, two detectives 40 years apart, could finally close the file. And in a twist no one could script, Michelle herself helped solve her own case. Her struggle, her fight, the cuts on her arms, the blood left behind, that resistance gave police the only thing they needed, a trail, a sliver of DNA. She did not go quietly. She made sure her story could be told. The case of Michelle Martinko isn't just a murder mystery. It's a mirror, one that reflects how justice can slip away and how long it can take to find its way back. After the trial, Cedar Rapids exhaled, not in celebration, but in release. For 4 decades, Michelle's name had lingered in news segments, dinner table conversations, classroom whispers. Every December, the city remembered. And every December, families locked their doors a little earlier, looked over their shoulders a little longer. Now there was a name, a face, a sentence, but not necessarily peace. Reporters flooded the story. Headlines ranged from "Justice at Last" to "DNA solves cold case after 39 years." National true crime outlets dissected the trial, praised the use of forensic genealogy, and called it a landmark moment in investigative history. But for Michelle's family, there was no victory. Her parents passed away, never knowing the truth. Her sister still visits the cemetery on holidays. Friends still carry the image of her empty chair at graduation. And even after the verdict, even with the weight of the evidence, some refused to believe Jerry Burns was guilty. That's the paradox of justice. When you wait long enough, the truth can feel just as strange as the lie. The Martinko case lit a fire in the world of law enforcement. Agencies across the country began revisiting their cold cases. Genetic genealogy exploded. New databases were created. New policies drafted. A wave of hope spread through communities still haunted by unsolved crimes. But it also raised new ethical questions. Should police be allowed to use public ancestry data without consent? Is it right to track down distant relatives to find a suspect? And if this technology exists, what happens when it's wrong? Michelle's story doesn't give easy answers. It gives silence, absence, and a single, terrifying truth. Sometimes your killer could be walking free for decades, smiling at neighbors, eating pizza, raising a family. Sometimes monsters wear human faces so well, we forget to be afraid. And sometimes it takes a teenager's fight, a bloodstain, and 40 years of determination to bring a secret into the light. This is the legacy Michelle Martinko left behind. Not just a story of tragedy, but a blueprint for justice. A reminder that evidence doesn't lie. That time doesn't always protect the guilty. And that no matter how deep the darkness goes, the truth can still bleed through. You've just heard the story of a murder at a mall. But more than that, you've heard the story of how one voice, silenced far too soon, still found a way to speak, still found a way to be heard. After the trial, Jerry Burns returned not to his family, but to a prison cell. His wife, who had stood beside him for decades, stopped appearing in public. His children, especially Jennifer, his daughter, were left reeling. For them, the man now behind bars had never been anything but kind, present, and normal. And that's what made it so unbearable. In a tearful interview with local press, Jennifer said, "I don't believe he did this. I know what the court said. I know what the DNA says, but that's not the father I knew. He was there for every recital, every birthday, every Christmas. That was my dad." But even as she defended him, the evidence stayed silent and undeniable. Even now, years after the verdict, the murder of Michelle Martinko remains a wound that never quite closed. In Cedar Rapids, people still remember where they were when they heard the news. Older residents recall the fear that gripped the city that winter. Parents held their children a little tighter. Teenagers who once roamed freely began asking for rides. And malls, once symbols of progress, suddenly felt unsafe. Michelle's murder wasn't just brutal, it was personal. The randomness of it all created a ripple of paranoia that never truly faded. Her face appeared in newspapers, school hallways, local news specials, year after year, generation after generation. Her name never left the headlines for long. Local journalists covered anniversaries like rituals. Former classmates gave interviews, some reluctant, some emotional, some still searching for answers. They remembered her not just as a victim, but as someone full of life, a singer, a sister, a friend. And in the middle of it all stood the detectives, young officers who inherited an unsolvable puzzle. Some took it on like a burden, others treated it like a calling. Detective Matt Denlinger, in particular, became a symbol of generational justice, a man finishing what his father had started. His journey was not just about solving a case, it was about proving that some things are still worth chasing, no matter how cold they get. After the verdict, Denlinger gave a short but emotional statement. "We didn't just find her killer, we gave this city back its truth." That line echoed across social media. It was quoted in newspapers, reshared by true crime communities, even printed on t-shirts by local college students. The case, in many ways, had become larger than life. True crime podcasts dissected every angle. Online forums debated timelines, speculated about other potential victims, and re-examined old rumors. Some questioned whether Jerry Burns had committed other crimes. Others suggested Michelle might not have been a random target after all. And then there were those who fixated on a darker idea, that Michelle's case was solved not because of technology, but because she had fought back hard enough to leave a mark, that her own resistance had made the truth unavoidable. It was poetic, tragic, and uncomfortably rare. Most cold cases never get solved. Most killers never get caught. And most victims never get to tell their own stories. But Michelle did, through the scratches on her hands, the blood on the gear shift, and the evidence she left behind.
So that's how the crimes end. And if you like this episode, don't forget to like and subscribe and turn on the notifications. If you want me to do some special crimes in all over the world, comment down below, or you can send us direct through email, and I will see you in all my videos. See ya!